Andrew, good to see you.
Yeah.
Andy, do we have communications with you?
Repeat that, please, Governor. Didn't quite catch it.
You answered it. You responded.
Okay. No, I can't hear you
us
for the record.
Can you hear us okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Are you ready to proceed?
I am. Are you ready? Yep, all set here.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. Call to order the State Board of Finance scheduled for today, August 8th, 2024, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we'll kick it off with the roll call. Ms. Hoover.
Thank you. Governor Lombardo,
Here.
Treasurer Conine,
Here.
Controller Matthews,
Here.
Member Edwards,
Here.
Member Navarro.
Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, the first opportunity for public comment. Comments from the public are invited at this time pursuant to NRS 241-020. The board intends to limit the comments to 3 minutes. And no restrictions will be imposed based on viewpoint. Comments will only be received on matters relevant to the board's jurisdiction. The board may discuss, but is precluded from acting on items raised during the public comment that are not on the agenda. And Ms. Hoover, the phone number was posted. Yeah, it is here. I got it here, and also the YouTube channel. So do we have any public comment there?
We
Carson
have,
City.
excuse me, Governor, we have none in person. We have none on the phone either.
Any online?
None online.
None?
No.
Any public comment here in Las Vegas? Seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of the agenda and move on to agenda item number 3 for discussion and possible action on the Board of Finance minutes from the meeting held on June 6, 2024. Do we have any comments or changes?
One minor one at the very last sentence in the.
Identify.
Yes. Member Navarro for the record. Quick comment, likely correction. The very last sentence in the minutes, Governor Lombardo moved to adjourn the meeting. I believe the next word should be motion. It says Motino passed unanimously. That's it. That's Italian. Yeah, change.
Did you get that, Ms. Hoover?
No, Governor, actually, that was a little bit garbled. Could that get repeated?
It was garbled here too.
On page 8 of the minutes, page 12 of the packet, this is Zach Conine. The second to last sentence, there is a typo in the word motion right before passed unanimously.
Thank you. We'll get that changed.
Right, I'll entertain a motion for approval with noted change.
So moved.
This is, do we have to do a second?
We're not large enough for a second, are we?
Nope.
Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you for, you actually read that all the way down to that.
Through.
That's fantastic. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 4 for possible discussion and possible action stated in Nevada Fall 2024 general obligation bond issuances. And we'll move to 4A for possible action.
Thank you
And
for the
who's
record.
presenting? Carrie, is Carrie doing it?
Yes,
Ms. E?
thank you. Carrie Eaton for the record. Agenda item number 4 is requesting the board's approval for the fall 2024 bond issuance. A high-level overview of the process is outlined on page 13 of the meeting packet. Essentially, the Nevada legislature authorizes certain projects and funding mechanisms for those projects. The state treasurer's office, in cooperation with other state agencies which have authority to implement those projects, coordinate the timing, rating agency presentations, and professional services necessary to issue securities on behalf of the state. Prior to the issuance of the securities by the state treasurer, a resolution describing the authority to issue securities must be approved by the State Board of Finance. The fall 2024 bond issuance is comprised of 4 series for a total of $200 million. And the division of bonds into different series is determined by the state's bond council based upon whether the debt is subject to or exempt from the state's debt limit, which is the debt's revenue stream utilized to pay the debt and the nature of the projects to be financed. The tentative schedule for the sale is approval by the Board of Finance today, the bond sale on October 16th, and the bond closing on November 6th. Approval of the resolutions must be voted on separately as agenda sub-items. So I will move on to item 4A. 4A is Series 2024A in the amount of $150.2 million for capital improvement and historic preservation projects with 5 components, including a refunding component for our 2024A bonds. The first portion has an estimated par of $19.5 million and is the 4th tranche of the $280.7 million authorized by AB 492 of the 2021 legislative session for various public works CIP projects. The State Public Works Division has received 3 prior tranches of bond proceeds for this authorization that must be spent prior to spending the proceeds from this issuance. A listing of the remaining CIP proceeds is listed in Appendix 1 on page 17 of the packet. The second portion has an estimated par of $47.8 million and is the second tranche of the $533.7 million authorized by AB 1 of the 2023 special legislative session for various public works CIP projects. The State Public Works Division has received 1 prior tranche of bond proceeds for the 2023 CIP authorization that must be spent prior to spending the proceeds from this issuance, and a listing of those remaining proceeds is also listed in Appendix 1. The third portion has an estimated par of $46.1 million and is the second tranche of the $111.3 million authorized by AB 1 for various DMV CIP projects. The first tranche of bond proceeds for the 2023 DMV CIP authorization must be spent prior to spending these proceeds from this issuance as well. And there is also a listing of the DMV CIP proceeds on Appendix 1. The fourth portion has an estimated par of $3 million and is the first tranche of the $3 million authorized by AB 1 to preserve and protect historical buildings as outlined in NRS 383.530. A listing of remaining historic preservation proceeds is listed in Appendix 1 as well. And then the final portion of this series is a refunding of outstanding 2014A CIP and historic preservation bonds. The current market conditions have created a significant benefit to the refunding estimates. So this portion now has an estimated par of $10.6 million and an anticipated net present value of savings anticipated to be 6.2%. So this definitely exceeds the board's debt management policy savings target of 3%. All 5 components of these series are paid with property taxes and subject to the constitutional debt limit. The board will be approving attachment A on page 19 to approve this series. And I'll stop there for approval.
Okay, so just, Ms. Eaton, just for a matter of clarification, on each one of those amounts presented, you were rounding them off, and it says estimate. Is that sufficient?
Yes,
For the record.
rounding and estimating, because as the market changes, those numbers can change until the sale date.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Ms. Eaton, this is Zach Conine. On the refunding component, because this has come up a few times, those estimates are based on today's market conditions. Market conditions could obviously change in the future, and in the past, we have had refunding situations go underwater, right, where the savings disappeared or moved under that level. Does the board need to take another action, or after the board makes this choice, is it just fully a treasury function as to whether or not it makes sense to sell those bonds?
After the board takes action, it is a treasury choice. If the savings target falls too low, then we will just pull those refundings.
So functionally, if there's a shift between here and the sale, we just wash it.
Okay. And when is the intended sale?
Deputy?
October 16th.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, no further questions. I'll entertain a motion for approval for item 4A.
This is Member Edwards. I move to approve item 4A.
Is that sufficient? Or do we need to read the title?
I would say, just read
The first one.
resolution designated by
That's
through the
sufficient.
courts.
She says it's sufficient.
Yes.
You're okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. Move on to agenda item 4B.
Thank you. Item 4B is Series 2024B for natural resources and open space bonds not to exceed 10.8 million with one component. This series has an estimated part of 10.8 million and is the second tranche of the 13 million authorized by AB1 for environmental improvement program projects for the Lake Tahoe Basin. The DCNR State Lands Division has approximately 6.1 million remain to spend from past issuances prior to spending the proceeds from this issuance. The listing of remaining EIP project proceeds listed in Appendix 1 on page 18 of the packet has incorrect information as the 2021B bond has been fully expended. This series is paid with property taxes and is exempt from the constitutional debt limit. The board will be approving attachment B on page 61 to approve this series. Available for questions.
Do we have any questions on item 4B? So Ms. Eaton, as far as the change on the appendix, do we have to identify that in the motion?
No, that's just for information.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval on item 4B.
This is Member Navarro for the record. I will motion for approval on item 4B.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to item 4C for possible action.
Thank you. Item 4C is Series 2024C for Safe Drinking Water Revolving Fund Matching Bonds not to exceed $6 million. This series is needed to provide state matching funds for future federal grants. Per NRS 445A.290, the treasurer may issue general obligation bonds to provide state matching funds for federal grants as required by the Safe Drinking Water Act when requested by the administrator of the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. The bonds in this series are self-supporting. The debt service is paid with principal and interest payments from loans made by the revolving fund. And this debt is exempt from the constitutional debt limit and is not included in the affordability model. The board will be approving attachment C on page 95 to approve this series.
All right, do we have any questions? Item 4C. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Andy Matthews, I move for approval of agenda item 4C.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. And we will now move on to agenda item 4D for action. Possible action.
Thank you. Item 4D is Series 2024D for a refunding of the remaining 2015F municipal bond bank loans not to exceed $32.7 million with two components. The first portion is to refund the municipal bond bank loan to the city of Fernley. The current market conditions have created a significant benefit to the refunding estimates as well. This portion now has an estimated PAR of 25.2 million and an anticipated net present value of savings anticipated to be 3.7%. The other portion now has an estimated PAR of 4.08 million to refund the municipal bond bank loan to the city of Fallon. The updated anticipated net present value of savings for refunding the Fallon portion of the bonds is anticipated to be 4.2%. The debt service is paid by local government bond payments. This debt is exempt from the constitutional debt limit and is not included in the affordability model. The board will be approving attachment D on page 146 to approve this series.
Right, do we have any questions? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval for item 4D.
This is Member Edwards. I move to approve item 4D.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Eaton. We will close agenda item number 4, move to agenda item number 5 for discussion and possible action, State of Nevada 2024 Highway Revenue Bond issuances. And we'll kick it off with 5A. Ms. Eaton?
Thank you. Carrie Eaton for the record. Agenda item number 5 is requesting the board's approval for the transportation bond issuance. Pursuant to statute, the Board of Finance, upon request by the Nevada Department of Transportation Board, will issue special obligation bonds for the state for NDOT to complete pending and ongoing highway construction projects. The NDOT board approved the resolutions at their July 16th meeting. Issuances are pledged with proceeds of state excise taxes on motor vehicle fuel and special fuel and any appropriated federal highway aid credited to the State Highway Fund. The board will be approving attachment A on page 185 to approve this series. The transportation bond issuance is comprised of 2 series for a total of $200 million. The tentative schedule for the sale is approval by the Board of Finance today, the bond sale on October 29th, and the bond closing on November 14th. Item 5A is Series 2024C, which is a $150 million bond to partially fund the Henderson Interchange and other regionally significant projects. This bond is pledged with motor vehicle fuel taxes. And I can take questions on 5A, or I have representation here as well from NDOT.
Do we have any questions on item 5A?
Just one question for me, Governor, if I could. Deputy, on the off chance that any of these specific projects that are referred to get slowed down, or if NDOT wants to speed another project up, do they have the flexibility to do that within this issuance?
Felicia Denny is here to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you. The easy answer is yes, we do. We have the flexibility to use it on various projects. The only constraint we have is for the fuel revenue indexing bond. We must use it on projects in Clark County.
Great, thank you.
So, Ms. Eaton, on, for the record, Governor Lombardo, the narrative provided for the motion, does it have to indicate both the Henderson Interchange and various other projects? Is various other projects sufficient?
Yes, I believe that is sufficient.
Okay.
I believe that's how
So
the Transportation Board approved them.
Yeah, they did. Okay, any other questions for specific to agenda item 5A from any board members? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
This is Member Navarro for the record. I will motion for approval of item 5A.
Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item 5B for possible action. Missy,
Thank you. Item 5B is Series 2024D, which is a $50 million bond to partially fund the Henderson Interchange and the I-515 MSE wall rehabilitation. This bond is pledged with fuel revenue indexing revenue and motor vehicle fuel taxes. Can answer any questions.
Ms. Eaton, I'm sorry to put you through this, but can you repeat what you just stated? I was on the wrong page and I want to make sure I follow your presentation.
No problem. It's page 184 in your packet. Series 2024D is a $50 million bond to partially fund the Henderson Interchange and the I-515 MSE wall rehabilitation. This bond is pledged with fuel revenue indexing revenue and motor vehicle fuel taxes.
All right, so for clarification, why was it separated to 150 and 50 reference to Henderson Interchange?
Felicia Denny for the record. The reason it's separated is due to the $50 million bond uses the fuel revenue indexing revenue to pay off the bond, whereas the other one is using state highway funds for the the $150 million bond. So we have to separate them out.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Any other questions?
This is Member Edwards.
Go ahead. Sir.
I drive an electric vehicle, and I know more and more people do. Is there any concern that that shift in a fuel source is going to have any impact on the adequacy of vehicle fuel funding for the bonds over the bond period?
Felicia Denny for the record. With NDOT, there is a concern longer term. We feel that the revenue will be adequate to pay out the bonds. There is in the law that was passed for the fuel revenue indexing, it states that the rate cannot be reduced as long as there are bonds outstanding on the revenue source. And we're expecting a couple of more upward adjustments. And so we're not concerned as far as the repayment of this bond. However, for the highway fund longer term, that is a concern of ours.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Andy Matthews, I move for the approval of agenda item 5B.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any against? Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, thank you, Ms. Eaton. We'll close agenda item 5 and move on to agenda item number 6, which is informational only item regarding the state treasurer's quarterly investment report for the quarter ended March 31st, 2024. Mr. Hale.
Stephen Hale for the record. Thank you, Governor and members of the Board of Finance. Page 314 of this report shows a summary of the general fund as of March 31st, 2024. The top table shows you the average daily balance, the all funds interest revenue, and the annualized interest rate. And you can see from December to March 31st, all of those items increased slightly, continuing positive trend over the past couple of years. This lower table shows the portfolio broken out by asset type. You can also see that the assets under management remained about the same, about 9.46 billion. So that's also a good thing. You can see the quality, 45% U.S. Treasuries or U.S. agencies. So it's still a high quality portfolio, and there were no major changes in assets percentages. So, going into page 2, reiterating what we saw on the first table, 94, we had a 98.4 billion in interest, million in interest in the second quarter. I know, wishful.
That would have been nice.
Third quarter, wishful thinking for my part.
Give them time.
Yeah, 2,100. So again, continuing a positive trend, we are still able to take advantage of higher interest rates on the front end of the curve because that's where the vast majority of our funds are invested, and show you later how we did that. But I did speak a little bit about this last time. As of right now, since the Fed has not made any changes in interest rates, we're still looking at about these levels or higher for the next quarter or two. Probably going to plateau the quarter in which we reside now. Because it does feel like there may be some pressure on interest rates before year end. Move on to the next page.
Does the Fed, I hear the narrative possibly September. What is your opinion?
It's on the table. Powell has, I'm sorry, I'm Stephen Hale for the record. Powell has said it is definitely on the table. So I've maintained that the market believes what it wants to believe. The market this year thought there would be 7 rate cuts. Fed is driving the bus. The market's fat in the back of the bus telling us where the Fed is going. I'm just going to continue to believe the Fed. And so it's on the table. We'll see what data comes out that might motivate them to act or not act, but I can't predict that, but I think they're signaling that they're willing to make a move.
That was a smooth answer.
Was opposed to the Zach Conine for the record, as opposed to the time a few meetings ago where he just like called it.
Yeah.
Chairman Hale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Page 3, let's just, the results of internally managed portfolios yielded 4.8% on the quarter. The externally managed aspects of the general fund portfolio earned 1.3 and 0.64%. And that, again, that's because their duration is much larger and they are exposed to 3-year, 4-year, 5-year investments that aren't paying as well, not nearly as well as the front end of the curve. Our in-house performance is still compressing towards the benchmark. We are approaching that. I don't think we're going to surpass that until rates start to come down, official market rates, the Fed cuts. And it's because we also have lagging assets that aren't yielding as much as the front end of the curve.
Could you expand on that a little bit, Deputy? When you say lagging assets, what do you mean?
It's things we purchased 3, 4, 5 years ago that are literally paying 0.25%, 0.5%, and 1% is exciting for 4 years ago. But those are rolling off over the next 3 years, and we shouldn't be impacted as much by that going forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Page 4. The interesting thing about the bottom chart, estimated maturity book value as of March 31st, 2024, is again, we're the blue for March 31st. We're putting most of our assets in the front part of the curve. That's yielding 5.3 to 5.4% from overnight to about the 3-month range. And we still think it's better to take advantage of that than to take a 100 basis point loss going out to the 2-year part of the curve. At some point, we'll extend duration more than we have. What's interesting is we had some opportunities to buy 10-year agencies at over 5%. That seemed like an easy call. So that's why you see some blue there where there was no red prior to, no investment in 10 years a year ago.
That blue will probably be lonely for quite some time.
Yeah. That'll be accretive to us for some time. Exactly. Again, we've mentioned outside manager performance. This top chart is Buckhead. They have been outperformed their index since inception and in the most recent quarter. 1.3% versus 1.06 for the benchmark. Same thing for WAM below. They have been outperformed their benchmark since inception, and again by almost a quarter point in the most recent quarter. Going on to page 6, see a nice breakdown of what asset types are held by each investment manager. That's in-house, Buckhead, Western Asset Management, and that quarter. So as you know, Buckhead does mostly structured and asset-backed assets that we, as of this moment, don't feel we have the expertise to do. And Western Asset Management does corporates primarily. That's their expertise. The below curve, again, last year versus this year, or sorry, it's December, end of year versus end of quarter. The dashed red line, what happened there is, again, the market believes, based on a comment that Paul made, that we were going to have a lot of rate cuts this year, and it started to rally as it became clear over the first calendar quarter that those rate cuts weren't coming, and the market capitulated. So that's why you see the movement upward in the yield curve. Go on to LGIP, Local Government Investment Pool, similar table. At the top, it just summarizes their performance for the quarter, also still an improving trend. And importantly, if you go down to the bottom table, they increased their assets. Participants availed themselves of the pool more in this quarter, an additional 300 some odd million. So that's nice. That'll improve their that pool's return for interest generated. And finally, on the last page, you can see LGIP has managed to eclipse its benchmark. Kudos to them, and just a positive outcome.
And so we're now, Zach Conine for the record, we're now over $2 billion worth of assets that the state treasury is managing with our outside manager for local school districts and cities and counties around the state who don't have the ability to manage it themselves.
Correct. Good. And that's the conclusion of my report. Are there any questions?
Do any of the board members have any questions? Mr. Hale? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 7 for discussion and possible action.
Stephen Hale for the record. I actually don't see a 7, but I think I know what it is.
Investment policies.
It's investment policies. They're submission to the board for approval. I have no changes to either of the investment policies.
Is that sufficient with no documentation?
Yeah, because we haven't changed anything.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, did you hear what he said?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'll entertain the motion for approval.
This is Member Navarro for the record, so moved. For approval of the treasurer's investment policies for the general portfolio and the local government investment pool.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, second opportunity for public comment. Do we have any public comment there, Mr. Matthews?
No, we do not.
We have it here in Las Vegas or online or on the phone. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And it's MOTION, right?
Yes.
Motino.
We have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.